Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. A lot of great stuff happened the last 2 days. Of course, you had Monday, my amazing appearance on the Dating Max Sports program. That was a lot of fun. It was a little bit winded after that appearance because there's just this whole act during some of the bits that happened that I probably try to think of in my own head. Be ready for what happens, how I'm going to respond, and maybe how I'm going to respond to the bit, and trying to sell it. I think you saw me on a show say something that was I was putting on some act, and it's exhausting, but it was good. It was good. It was good to see. It was good to hear from Dave and Roy, and of course I was at the IWF the other day.
And how was that IWF show, by the way?
It was a lot of fun seeing in person. The guys that do that show, those wrestlers, they do a good job putting on a great show for the their fans, and of course the families, everyone that comes that comes there to see the show. And it was raining that day. Luckily, during most of that rain, I was indoors. It kind of started pouring right as I got off the New Jersey Transit bus, which was it leaves me very short walk, maybe a couple of 5 minutes to the venue. So I got there pretty quick. So I was indoors during most of the rain, and some miracle, the show ended. They gave me enough time to go to the Saturday bus, which I didn't have. Once I got to that bus stop, on the we stood, but I had to get an Uber at Woodside. Once I took the subway back to Woodside, I had to get an Uber back to Woodside because I didn't want to wait. I didn't feel like waiting for the bus from Woodside. I get a bus the rest of the way to my neighborhood where I live because I don't live near a train station when those areas in Queens. So I just had to get the Uber. It was like $6. I only had to pay $6 on an Uber, but I was gonna do it. No way I was gonna wait at midnight for once it hits midnight, the bus wait is slower. So I had to opt for the Uber. But
very cool, man. I'm glad you had a good time. Obviously, the Ubers, when you take that Uber from Woodside, definitely cuts the time down a little bit. So I get it. That public transportation could be a pain in the ass when you've been riding around on it all day. So hey, I'm glad to hear you had a good time at the IWF show. Obviously, the great Kevin Knight, who unfortunately we couldn't get on before the show this year. We just had too much crap going on the last few weeks. But hopefully we will be getting on Kevin soon. And just a great Met fan, great guy. And do yourself a favor, if you want to donate or check out anything they do, check out campiwf.com. And also, too, we'll be putting a link to the Eastside Dave, the Davey Max Sports program episode that you appeared on. We'll be having that in the description of this episode, too, if you want to check that out, because it was just another great episode. And by the way, before we move on, congratulations, Dan, on winning the championship in the Eastside, the Davey Max Sports program against the great Big A. That was a great win for you, right?
Yeah, like I said, that was a tough competition. I was exhausted after because it's a lot of energy I exert doing these shows, and especially Davey Max Sports program. It exerts a lot of energy, and trying to defeat. I mean, nothing to beat, but trying to beat him, it's a lot of energy to exert to really put on that act that with some bits that I really had to sell to get to impress the people at the Baby Max Sports program. But I sold it, and I think I just ate dinner and fell asleep after I got home. They they sent like a list for me to and from there. So
Oh, that's very cool of them.
where the location I was there via Zoom. I was there via Zoom. So but once I got back, I just picked up like I think I picked up like there was luckily like it was like the Jersey Mike's was still open, so I was able to pick that up via the app and
Very
ate
cool,
that
man.
and I just went to sleep and went to sleep pretty much.
Of course. Well, hey, it was a big competition, and one more thing actually. Now that it just dawned on me, that we moved on because obviously we're going to transition into a terrific game one for our New York Rangers. But during this show, you and Dave did make a bet for this Rangers Devils series, and I'm just wondering, what are you gonna do if you have to go through with this bet now and pretty much attack Dave with a skate at his throat if the Rangers win?
All right, I do got to be clear. Well, for one thing, I got to be clear for like because I know not everyone watches the Baby Max Sports program, but those who do know will hopefully they understand that there are certain things that like is an act. So just bear in mind it is an act, but
Yes, because also if the Rangers lose, I highly doubt that you're gonna go blow yourself up.
yeah, exactly. Bear in mind if you're watching the Baby Max Sports program for the first time, and maybe I kind of need to say this. Hopefully this isn't ruining anything, but you do need to kind of be a little smart about when you're watching this that it is an act. Some there are things on that show that are an act. I'm not actually going to go. Hopefully, when the Rangers win, me and Robert are not going to go there and harm Eastside Dave.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
No, definitely not. If anything, we would probably do what the hockey teams do in a playoff series. If anything, we'd shake hands with the East Side Dave after that one.
Shake hands in the middle of the ice. Yep, no doubt about it. Stick taps
Well,
and a tip of the cap.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Maybe have a beer or two after. That's about it.
Exactly. And I'm sure Dave, Dave, he's not really that big of a Devils fan. He's much more of a Yankees fan, but he definitely likes his home state, New Jersey Devils. So it'll definitely be a fun series. And while we're talking about it, man, let's get into it. What an exciting game one for our New York Rangers, man. Um, I'll throw up some of these highlights because it was just such a blast to watch right from the get-go. Rangers win 5-1, beat the Devils, take a 1-0 lead. I mean, you must have been thrilled watching this game last night, Dan, right?
Oh, believe me, I had the beer on hand. I had my snacks. I'm watching this game. I'm pumped. I was making a lot of noise. My dog was kind of. I guess he was kind of celebrating a bit. It was just a lot. It was just such a fun win. I mean, we did everything we needed to do to win this game. We we played very strong defense. I guess we kind of somewhat tried to stay out of the penalty box. But our killing was right up to where we needed to be against the Devils. I can't. I'm gonna probably brush off that penalty shot that used because we were winning we were pretty much had that game sealed, and unfortunately it's literally a penalty shot, so it's like we couldn't defend that really much the goalie, but it was just a well played game by the Rangers, complete team effort to win that what we needed to do, and Igor was money when he needed to be.
He really
And
was, man. He stood up at some really, really big points in this game.
yeah, and plus I got to give credit to all the Rangers fans that made the trip out there to New Jersey. It's a literally short trip, of course, across the river on a Jersey Transit. I don't know if you've ever attended a concert or saw the Rangers on the road at the Prudential Center in the away game there. It's actually like a cup. It's like very from the New Jersey Transit station out there in Newark. Very short walk.
Yeah, I heard
Not
it's
difficult
right
to go.
off there. I've never actually been to the Prudential Center yet, but yeah, I hear it's very nice and I hear it's very convenient. So yeah, I just haven't made it out there yet. But man, what a fun game that we had yesterday.
Yeah, that was just a great one, and I expect the Rangers to be on full force. I mean, completely ready for to hopefully get going to the Garden a two nothing series lead, and of course also the Rangers fan. Of course, I expect the Rangers fans to be there in full force again. Of course, with the short distance between the two cities,
Well, let's
but
not get ahead of ourselves yet, man. They still got this this big game two. If you're watching this on Thursday on 420, by the way, you'll be seeing that this will be kind of your pre-show heading into game two for the Rangers Devils. So let me ask you, Dan, what do you think was the biggest factor? Because one thing that a lot of people mentioned coming into this series, and understandably so, was that the Rangers had the decisive edge when it comes to playoff, experience. Obviously, we saw Tarasenko scoring that first goal. Then you had another guy with plenty of playoff experience and Kreider tallying a couple. Obviously the Rangers looked like a primed and ready machine, ready to go this postseason. And here's the penalty shot we were talking about too, which I was not a fan of that call. But what do you think, Dan? Did you think that the experience really played a major role in game one?
I really believe so. That experience really played a role. The Rangers, the players on this team had been to the playoffs before. You even had guys on the team. Well, unfortunately, they won elsewhere, but they had experience winning the cup. So everybody was they were ready, like without a doubt. They all went into this ready, and they delivered big time with that win. Also, speaking of the playoffs, as I don't know if you can see it because it's only the sec because yesterday morning was the last time I shaved before the playoffs. I'm starting to grow my playoff beard.
There we go. There we go. Playoff beard in full force now, man. We got the you know gigantic game two coming up now. The Devils they looked a little shell shocked at times in this game one, and I really do think that a big thing that this series is going to come down to is the goaltending, and even though you have to tip your cap to Vanacek, the Devils goalie who's having his first year here, had a terrific season for the Devils, fit perfectly in this system, had a great regular season, but once you get to the playoffs, it's a different thing entirely, right? And it feels like, and that's not to say that that's going to be the theme for the rest of this series, because as we remember last year, Shesterkin had some tough moments in that first round last year against the Pittsburgh Penguins too. So it'll be interesting to see if Vanacek can straighten himself out and return to his regular season form throughout the rest of the series. Dan, what do you think? Do you think he's going to be able to do that?
That I feel like is a question mark. He looked like he wasn't quite. He kind of been. This kind of his first time in the playoffs. Didn't looked a bit green a bit in going into this game. Without a doubt, the Rangers just had their number, and I feel like the Rangers just had the edge on the goaltending. Igor had been there. He knew, he learned from that experience of last year. So this
Yeah,
this
yeah,
this team did their homework going into the game.
yeah. No, I agree with you, man. And when it comes down to it, the other things that you really have to factor in are the guys around him too. And although Vanacek did not play a great, as I was just checking on the Islanders trail their series 1-0, and they're trailing the game 1-0. We'll check in on them in a little bit though, but the guys in front of Vanacek just did not play well either. When they have some experience. They have Marino, who used to be with the Penguins on a couple of their championship runs. They have Dougie Hamilton, who has plenty of playoff experience. They have Tatar, who had a long run with the Kings a couple of years. I'm sorry, the Montreal Canadiens a couple of years ago. They have guys on this roster, and that's not, and obviously they've also had Timo Meyer, who had a lot of experience with San Jose there too. But in a lot of their forward positions and the goalie, that experience isn't there. Jack Hughes was his first playoff game last night. That and I gotta say, it looked like it. A lot of the times it looked like the Devils weren't up to the task of that moment. And you'd think that the Rangers would have had the same trouble last season, but they came out, and even though they did have their moments, like we said, they came out and were very competitive in most of their games in the first round. They had that one blowout loss where I think they also lost actually 4 or 5-1, whichever it was in Game 4 in Pittsburgh. But other than that, the Rangers were a very consistent team, and especially in Game 1. If you remember, they came out and won that Game 1 last year 4-3. And if in the NHL, if you win Game 1, you win the series about 68% of the time. So that's definitely a big win, right?
Yeah. Actually, to correct you, last year the Rangers lost Game 1 and I think, what was it, like triple overtime? I just remember that game last year had like so many overtimes. I was I was actually yeah,
Was
I
that
was
Game 1 that they lost?
yeah, that was Game 1. I just remember that day last year. I was at a Met game. It was a doubleheader, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
it started like late afternoon, the first game. I remember, but then somehow I didn't think the game was still going to be on when I got back. But I had the Rangers game on via my headsets and the NHL app, the radio broadcast of the game. Right, the Met game ends. The game's still going on in overtime, and I'm listening on my headphones on the ride back. The whole time it was still going on, the game in overtime. Like the subway ride back. Once I got off the subway, but took the bus back to my house to where I live, and I turn on it and I'm still listening. I got back. I got into my living room, the chair in my living room, and the game is still on. And I watched the remainder of the game. That unfortunately didn't end how I would have wanted to, but the game was still on by the time I reached that living room chair.
Actually, Dan, you're right. I just double checked, and yeah, it was a 3 overtime game. The Rangers ended up they took the early lead in that game, which is what I was remembering, but they ended up losing it 4-3 in triple overtime. They came back and won Game 2 though 5-2, which was pretty big. But
which, by the way, Game 2 I was at. I was
I
there
remember
for
that. You're
I was
right.
there
You're
for
right.
Game 2. That was like the first time I had attended a playoff game since 2014. I hadn't attended, so that was like extra special, and I still got to give credit to my little sister for giving me that ticket for my birthday.
Very cool, man. Yeah, they won that game 5-2. And then if you remember too, they actually went out the next 2 games and allowed 7 goals both nights. They lost 7-4 and then 7-2 in Pittsburgh. So, but hey, I mean, then the Rangers ended up flipping that switch and having a great rest of that series. So, the Rangers have to watch out for a lot of those pitfalls that Pittsburgh experienced last year, just letting the Rangers regroup and get themselves back in the series, the Rangers cannot allow the Devils to get up off the mat. They're down 1-0 right now. And just like you said, I mean, the goal is to go back to the Garden up 2-0. And the way the Devils looked in game one, that's not out of the realm of possibility. But you also have to remember that the Devils are going to come back with a much better effort in game two, and the Rangers have to be ready for it.
Yep, they need to still kick them while they're down.
Yeah, you're right. It's like like in wrestling, professional wrestling, when you have a guy down, you give him your finishing move. You're Stone Cold Steve Austin, you give him the stunner. If you're The Rock, you give him the rock bottom. So you have to go out there and finish these guys off. You can't let them hang around, because that's all these teams need, just that little bit of belief. And if they have that, man, that's the last thing you need.
Yep, exactly. You cannot treat your opponent in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You cannot treat your opponents like it's Glass Joe and Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Exactly. It's going to be a lot harder than that. It's not the first stage of that video game.
Yeah, exactly. This is more like you're fighting a more harder fighter, like maybe like a King Hippo or Piston Honda or Soda Popczynski and I forgot the other one, a Great Tiger, and I think there was another one called Super Macho Man. I don't know why I remember the name of all those boxers you fought in Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and of course the Stanley Cup at the finals, that's facing Mike Tyson.
Oh yeah, that's like a combination of Tyson and like Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII.
yeah, exactly. I can't forget that one, but yeah, that's what. And speaking of that, I don't know why mentioning this. After this episode ends, I might just go take out my NES and my old school NES and play some Mike Tyson Punch Out.
There we go. Even actually, they have a version of that game on the Switch now too. So it's not necessarily Mike Tyson, but it's still it's pretty cool to mess around with.
They have sports. I don't own a Switch yet, but when they maybe have to pick one up. But yeah, they have I am aware they have a version of Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and a little bit of a fact of that version of Mike Tyson's Punch Out. When the game later releases of the game, because they didn't have the license for Mike Tyson's likeness, they reverted to the version of the final boss that was in the original Japanese release of the game, which was a fighter named Mr. Dream that had the same moveset as Mike Tyson. So
really,
yeah. So literally, if you were to talk to someone in Japan who remembers the NES days, or as the NES was known as in Japan, the Famicom, they might not be familiar with Mike Tyson being the final boss in that
game. Wow, very interesting, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you're pretty much facing, if the first time you've played Mike Tyson's Punch Out on the Switch, you're pretty much facing the final boss that was in the Japanese release of the game.
Wow, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And with that, actually, man, let's keep this thing rolling on right now. We do have a lot to get to today. As a quick check-in on the score of the Islander game, the Islanders are currently trailing the Carolina Hurricanes 2-0 in the second period of game two.
God.
There.
I gotta say, Sena, I don't know, someone, maybe one of my cousins in Long Island, check my Uncle Mike's pulse. I mean, my Uncle Mike, he's up there. He isn't getting any younger. He's probably watching that game. Who knows how? I hope he didn't accidentally destroy the TV or something, because I can hear in my own head. How my Uncle Mike is reacting to that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tough go of it, and to be honest, too, I got to give the Islanders a break. That game one, if that was the Rangers, I would have been pissed, because the game-winning goal, the second goal that they scored on the power play, that was a phantom call. The penalty never happened. I forget what exactly he got called for, but they sent the guy to the box and he didn't even commit the penalty. So you just kind of feel bad that the referees kind of decided that game won.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, me personally, if I was the Rangers, some of the things that be coming out of my mouth, and this might be a little bit of a watered down version of it, but you might hear me yelling some things out like "these refs suck," or chanting out very out bullshit every time an umpire or a ref makes a bad call. I've been known to chant that. Only I chanted a lot much louder than how depicting. Trust me, it's so loud my dog might get startled.
Yeah. So just we'll touch on the aisles real quick. Just but I mean, what do you think, Dan? Do you think that Carolina's going to easily take care of the Islanders, or do you think that obviously things aren't going for them right now, aren't going great for them? Halfway through the second period, they're being outshot 19-9. They're trailing 2-0. They're down 1-0 in the series. So right now, it looks very much like the Islanders are going to be heading back to the UBS Arena down 0-2. Do you think that? And as a matter of fact, as I'm saying that, they put one in. Kyle Palmieri scored to cut the lead in half, 2-1. So that gives Islanders fans something to cheer about there. But do you think that should the Islanders not come back in this game, that maybe heading back to UBS Arena will give them a little, a refresh and let them get back in the series?
Hold on, you're breaking up a little bit.
Are you there?
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. But anyway, what I was going to say is that I feel like there's no good. For some reason, I don't think that team's going to go down without a fight. So it might, that playoff series might start to get a little interesting. With the outcome of it, pending the outcome of game 3.
So what actually we didn't do our predictions for that series. What do you think if you had to pick right now? Who do you think is coming out on top of this series, and how many games do you think it goes?
I just think in that series, I think the Owls are going to probably win that at 6 games.
Wow. Okay. I actually feel. I also feel like it's going to be 6 games, but I feel like the Hurricanes pull it off. But yeah, that's what's going to come down to tonight. As now the Islanders really have to do their best to try and steal this game in Carolina and keep this game keep this series rolling. And hey, you go back to UBS 1-1, anything can happen. But you're down 0-2, you're in a pretty bad hole against a really good team. And Dan, with that, I want to keep it rolling, and let's move on to the Knicks, who obviously the Knicks had a really, really bad game 2, but a very fun game 1. That's why we'll show you some of the highlights from game 1. But man, what a bad game 2 to follow that up with. What was your take for these first 2 games of this Knicks Cavs series, which looks like we're going to be in it for the long haul?
I feel like game one felt like the Knicks were just playing up to what they needed to do. It was just a nice solid win, solid effort all around. I had to kind of like take peeks at the game on and off because it was at the same time as the IWF show. I think I watched some. I was watching highlights on the way back. It was a nice little solid effort. Game 2 just felt like they were flat all around. There was no defense. It just felt like by the second half of the game, it felt like it was over at the second half.
Yeah, it really did. It was almost like when they pulled away in the second quarter, And, it went from being about a 25-22 game where the Knicks were still a shot or two away to when they pulled away and made it a 38-26 or whatever the score was there, even though it was only a 12-point game. And, I mean, geez, we see 12 and 20-point leads get erased in the NBA on pretty much a day in, day out basis. But it just felt like, just like you said, like that was it. The wind was taken out of the Knicks' sails, and they could just not get anything to drop at all. It really felt like almost, you saw Karis LeVert just going out there and hanging out on the perimeter, just waiting to knock down threes. And it seemed like every time they kicked it out to him, he would knock that three down. But then when they turned right back around and, the Knicks tried to do that, whether it was Brunson kicking it out to, RJ or Randall or anything, it was just not going to go. And it was the same thing with Brunson, too. It felt like Brunson was really trying to force his shots. He started 3 for 5, but then he missed about 5 or 6 consecutive shots. And it just seemed like he wasn't distributing the ball. And the Knicks got out of doing what they do or what they've done all year. And that's just play that consistent level of basketball, right?
Yeah, exactly. They need to go back to that, and we'll see how it turns out. I feel like this series is going to go. I felt the Knicks are going to win this in 5 games. So far, it looks like that, and hopefully I'm right about my prediction of that one.
Yeah, I hear you. It seems like there's still a chance that could be the case, but hey, the Knicks are going to have to go home and do just what we said the Islanders are going to have to do. They're going to have to go back to the Garden and take care of business. They're going to have to win Game 3, and hey, if you want to make it a quick series, win Game 4 too. But something tells me, I don't know why, I actually predicted this when we first made our predictions last week. I said that my head told me Cavaliers in 6, but I'm gonna go with Knicks in 7. And just seeing these first 2 games, but it just seems like that these teams are too well matched up. You know what I mean?
Exactly, that's what I feel like. It's like it's 2 evenly matched up teams. It's going to be a nail biter. I mean, they're going to have to check my pulse each of the last 5 minutes of each of these games.
One thing that I did notice that kind of troubled me a little bit in this game too was that Thibodeau, that he wasn't really rolling those guys out there too much, especially even early on with Randall. Randall only played about 5 minutes for the first quarter and a half, really. So I feel like Thibodeau really has to get back into his swing of things of using these players in the manner in which he's done it really, really well for the last couple of months, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. He needs to stick with what works, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. And that's what the Knicks really have to that has to be their motto. That really has to be their motto, man. And especially with all the NBA is really such a tough league to get through. Could be because much like the NHL, it's every single round is tougher than the last. Every single round is a 7-game series. It's not like baseball where it starts off, 3 out of 5 or whatever this new wild card series. The first round is not even that; it's 2 out of 3. So, it's a definite grind when it comes to the NBA and getting through it, and it's a long series. So I expect this to be a long series too. And let's just keep our fingers crossed that things fall the Knicks' way, right?
Exactly. That's what we can do right now at this point.
All right, and yeah, man, let's just keep it rolling on now, as we're really getting to a groove right now. And Now I think it's time we got the hockey and the basketball, the playoffs out of the way, which we had to do those. Those are the real important games now. But I know both of us have been sitting here salivating, waiting to talk about this whole Mets and Dodgers and Max Scherzer crap that we saw. So I'm going to put this up right now. Let's jump in. We'll start off with the Mets. And this is the video of Scherzer getting checked and then getting thrown out of the game for having a sticky substance on his hand. Dan, what did you think when all this was going down?
I think it was complete bullshit. Max Scherzer was saying like it was probably sweat and rosin, whatever it was, because I mean it is LA, so it's probably insanely hot. So it was like sweat and rosin out there, and this umpire was complete bullshit. I mean, I immediately when I saw that when they came back from commercial, see that happened, I was yelling at the TV like I may have even been singing the Shizer list jingle when it comes to Phil Cuzzy. He's on the Shizer list now.
Oh, he's definitely on the Shizer list, man. You're right about that. And I was listening to the with Buck Showalter, and Buck was talking about how Cuzzy is the only umpire in baseball who's ejected anybody for those substances, and he's done it 3 times already this year. So what the hell is that's another thing too that Major League Baseball really has to figure out. It seems like these umpires don't know what the hell rules to enforce, what rules not to enforce. We saw the guy getting called for a balk the other night in the Dodger game on Monday night against the Mets. And I got to say, I'm a Met fan. I was very happy that he called the balk and the Mets benefited from it. But I was watching it, and it didn't look like a balk. Then you got Cuzzy calling this ridiculous sticky substance today and throwing him out. What is going on with these umpires? And if you ask me, it all goes back to the man at the top, Rob Manfred, sending out all these different signals to these guys. These guys don't know what the hell to do these days, right?
Yeah, it's like the freaking umpire is a joke. Rob Manfred's a joke. It's like, what the fuck? I like freaking because of freaking this dumb shit. Now we potentially have to go into the Brave series without Max Scherzer. I mean, it's already enough. We're waiting for Verlander's going to not be back until May. It looks like everything's progressing well with the Verlander, but it's like it's going to be a real. I mean, it's going to be a. I just hope we somehow manage to find a way to take 2 out of 3 because we gotta win that series against Atlanta. We gotta take 2 out of 3, potentially 3, but we gotta at least take 2 out of 3 from Atlanta. We gotta kick them while we got the chance.
Yeah, and the Braves are one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. As great as the Rays have been, they just put out the power rankings and whatever. Take the power rankings for MLB.com with what you will, but the Dan, you there? Oh, okay, there you go. Your camera cut out for a sec, but the Braves right now are on an 8-game winning streak, and they have been the number 1 ranked team for the power rankings on MLB.com. They overtook the Rays, which I don't necessarily agree with, but you have to look at that and just see that's how good the Braves have been early on. And even though the Mets have kind of straightened themselves out a little bit with this 5-1 road trip so far, sweeping the A's and taking 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, the point is that we shouldn't be looking at it like this right now. We shouldn't have to be looking at this saying, just like you said, looking 2 or 3 series ahead now and saying, oh man, now we have to worry about Max Scherzer being suspended for 10 games, which is 2 starts, granted. Okay, he's not an everyday player. He's going to miss 10 team games, which means 2 starts for a pitcher every 5 days. That's still ridiculous. I really can't believe that a garbage call by Phil Cuzzy could end up costing the Mets a Scherzer start against their division rivals. It just seems like it's ridiculous, and I really hope Major League Baseball is smart enough to intervene and look at it and say that Scherzer did nothing wrong. Because as a matter of fact, Dan, I don't know if you saw this, But this was Max Scherzer. Let's take a couple of minutes and just see this Max Scherzer. This was his reaction on SNY after the game. And he explains in detail that it was just rosin, and he even goes on to say that he swears on his kids that he didn't use anything. So you know Scherzer's deadly serious about this. Let's see.
Because it's sweat and rosin.
Oh, oops.
So after the second inning, my hand, it was a little clumpy from the rosin and sweat. That it was clumpy, and Phil told me to wash off, so I washed it off. Came back out there after the third, with alcohol. I washed it with alcohol and rosin, and when I went back out there, the alcohol for a little bit there can be sticky in rosin. That can happen. So he was like, "That's too sticky. You need to go back on there, wash it off again, and reapply the rosin." And so I did that, and then at the same time, he thought my glove had too much rosin on it. And I was like, okay, if that's a problem, there's nothing going on. He's like, you need a new glove. Like, okay. So I come back out, pitch the third, and knew I was going to get checked in the fourth. So I'd have to be an absolute idiot to try to do anything when I'm coming back out for the fourth. So after that third inning, I'm in front of the MLB official that's underneath here. I wash my hand with alcohol in front of the official. I then apply rosin, and then I grab sweat. When I then go back out there, and Phil Cuzzy says that my hand's too sticky. I don't get it. Yes, when you use sweat and rosin, your hand is sticky, but I don't get how I get ejected when I'm in front of MLB officials doing exactly what you want, and being deemed my hand's too sticky when I'm using legal substance. I do not understand that.
What did Phil say after you clearly explained that to him on the field?
He said my hand's too sticky, and I said, I swear on my kid's life, I'm not using anything else. This is sweat and rosin, sweat and rosin. I keep saying it over and over, and they touch my hand, they say it's sticky, and I yes, it is, because it's sweat and rosin, and they say it's too sticky. It's not, and they threw me out because of that.
Are you confident, given that you did everything in front of an MLB official, that this suspension would not be upheld? Do you feel like, because you did it in full view, that you can appeal the automatic suspension?
Yeah, now it's becoming a legal matter, and I don't want to, comment what happens next, if I get suspended or not. We'll see what happens.
Max, your spin rate today was what it has been all season long. With technology that's in play, do you feel before umpires make a decision like this, there should be some communication with somebody before they jump to this conclusion?
I completely agree with that.
When you came,
All right, see, and that makes a lot of sense with that last question that was just asked. I mean, his spin rate was the exact same it's been all year. So how could they go out on a limb and eject a guy that's a future Hall of Famer, one of the best pitchers in baseball, from a game because of a like you said, a little sticky feeling? But that's what happens when you mix sweat and rosin. It's been that way for 150 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's like utter bullshit, and I hope he at least gets his suspension reduced. I think that they probably won't be able to completely throw away the suspension. He's probably gonna miss one start, probably, to be fair in this whole thing. But I have to say, during the offseason, a bunch of umpires retired. Maybe Phil Cuzzy should have been one of the umpires who retired, and maybe same thing goes with Angel Hernandez.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that, man. I mean, I never really had a problem with Phil Cuzzy, but how are you the umpire? And look, to be fair to Angel Hernandez, if Angel Hernandez was the only umpire that had thrown players out for this season for having a sticky feeling on their hand or whatever, then everyone would be killing him, and rightfully so. Everyone would be mocking him online, would ripping him apart. He'd be the top story of all baseball sports talk shows and all that stuff. So how come Phil Cuzzy does it and he gets kind of a pass until now? I guess maybe now it's come out in the open. Maybe the fact that he did it to a New York team of even though they were breaking Domingo Herman's balls the other night for the Yankees, but then he didn't get thrown out of the game. I'm not sure if that was Phil Cuzzy or not. Maybe that explains why he didn't get thrown out, but I don't know, Dan. I mean, Phil Cuzzy, how is he the only guy that's thrown anybody out? That tells me that he's the guy that doesn't understand the rule and has the problem, and it's not the players that he's throwing out.
Exactly. He's the problem, and action needs to be taken by Robert Manfred, everyone, the higher ups in baseball, maybe even the higher ups in I guess the umpires. If there's like a senior umpire of all the umpires that kind of like evaluates and maybe reprimands others umpires that are making bad umpiring. But something needs to be done big time.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I mean, that's just ridiculous. They're lucky that it didn't cost the Mets the game today because, as you see on the bottom and everything, like we're talking about, the Mets ended up getting lucky. Well, not lucky. I mean, they won the game today as they should have. They played really well, and they beat old friend Noah Syndergaard. So, let's talk about that for a second. It felt pretty good to beat Noah today, right, Dan?
Yeah, it did, because it's still a sour taste in my mouth the way he just left. Like, he just didn't want to take wait for him to give another counter offer. He just, he was left right at the get-go, and that just left me a sour taste. Like, that fucking guy, I was bothered by it, and it was just a breath of fresh air to just go and just beat him and saying, maybe you would have had a much better time here in Flushing.
Exactly, man. Especially, now he's 0-3, and he's got and look, I think Noah is still a pretty good pitcher. I would still want him on the Mets. I'm a fan of his, but the fact of the matter is he's a different pitcher now too. The guy's only throwing 92, 93 miles an hour, and he's a different pitcher now. He's older. He's 30 years old, which is still, it is crazy to me too when you really think about it that Noah Syndergaard is only 30 years old now, right?
Yeah, that really shocks me. I mean, I cannot believe this guy's only 30, and it's like the last couple of year or two, he's been kind of there's been a lot of hiccups, like at 30, surprisingly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because not only have we been talking about Noah Syndergaard since 2015 when he broke in the majors and helped the Mets get to that World Series that year, but we've been talking about Noah Syndergaard since the R.A. Dickey trade back in 2012, where he was the centerpiece along with Travis d'Arnaud, coming back here, and so I mean, think about it. That was 2012. That's 11 years ago. That means we've been talking about Noah Syndergaard since he was 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I was excited for this guy's debut. I still remember that. I think I still have that shirt that the Mets gave away. It was this store that it was done by the guy that does the comic. I'm gonna say I still got that bobblehead that he gave out at the Met game, that Noah Syndergaard at store bobblehead. I remember that.
Yes,
And
yeah, you're right. I do remember that.
yeah, I also remember pretty much a joke I can make about a little mistake on the bobblehead. What they did with that hammer at the base of the bobblehead kind of looks. I just someone pointed this out, and I was just having hey man, let's well, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just but then the second, I think the next year they also gave out a Noah Syndergaard store bobblehead. That bobblehead, of course, was different, and they didn't make that anything mistake like that. But it was a nice bobblehead. But yeah, that was something else. And I remember how neat it was seeing Noah Syndergaard. And then even when he made that cameo in Game of Thrones, you remember that?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I actually didn't even notice it until after I watched the episode, because it was like a blink and you miss it moment until someone on social media pointed out where he appeared in the episode. Because it was very quick, his little appearance in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's true.
Speaking of Game of Thrones, there's a whole video about big stars that made guest appearances in Game of Thrones that probably weren't noticed when these episodes first aired.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, there's a whole video of it about stars that appeared in Game of Thrones.
very cool, man. All right, and yeah, so as we're winding down here, we got just a couple of minutes left before we get out of here. We do want to finish up with the little Yankee talk, as yesterday the Yankees lost 5-2 to the Angels, but as we're watching right now, the Yankees are currently beating the Angels 2-1, as Ohtani went deep yesterday. Judge, went deep today. 2-run shot in the first inning, but this was the Ohtani shot from yesterday, and man, that's going to look pretty good in a couple of years when he's hitting that in orange and blue at Yankee Stadium, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That'll look pretty great in Washington. That. Hopefully, Steve show hey, maybe were you enjoying it during this little trip to New York? I know you cut to the plane, but maybe you like some restaurants. Maybe you enjoyed it. Maybe why don't you come out here to New York full time next year? They join the Mets.
Exactly.
Exactly. We also got great food at City Field.
Hell yeah, no doubt about it, man. Great.
But
He can come over and I'll pick him up one of the sausage and peppers heroes if he wants.
exactly. As a matter of fact, if Shohei Ohtani were to join the Mets next season, we would gladly volunteer to go to JFK Airport to pick him up.
Oh yeah, you got that right. Hell,
and
yeah.
I would make sure he get his first burger at Donovan's at Woodside.
I was gonna say, and hell, man, me and you will go to Tokyo Airport to pick him up if that's what it takes to get him to come play in Queens.
yeah, exactly. If he insisted, if that's what it took us doing a sightseeing trip to Japan, like he gives us a tour of Japan, I will gladly sign up for that if that's what it takes for Shohei Ohtani to come to Queens.
Exactly, man. But yeah, so let's just I just want to wrap up with the Yanks though, because the Yankees have been having a lot of trouble, just like the Mets have with these injuries and everything, and they have gotten a good start at Johnny Brito tonight. So I do want to tip the cap to them with that, because they're just kind of piecing it together like the Mets are. They still haven't gotten anything out of Rodon. Garrett Cole is the best pitcher in right now. Garrett Cole is probably the best pitcher in baseball. I hate to say it, but he probably is. You got to tip your cap to that guy. He goes out there, and to follow that up real quick, did you see that DeGrom left his start early in Texas the other night with a wrist discomfort?
I saw footage of that. Like that just feels uncomfortable seeing that. Like you just feel bad seeing a guy get hurt like that. I mean, these guys on other teams. I mean, you want to beat them, but you don't want to see them get hurt like that. That just anytime, regardless of what team they're on, when I see a player like that get hurt, it's not fun to see that. Like you just hope the guy's healthy. He comes back okay. That
Yeah.
And especially the fact during this time with the Mets, we've been through that. Like he usually always consistently I haven't seen him make many trips to the IL like that. Like he's missed a lot of time, but there have been times he's done, but and there have been times when he was around. He was like one of the biggest things we've seen. But That just not great seeing that happen to anyone.
Yeah. I mean, and the injury bug is all over the place. Obviously, like we said, DeGrom is down. You know, we talked about the Yankees. Now Giancarlo Stanton is back on the IL now. He's injured, having another hammy problem as he ripped a double the other day, pulled into second base. Didn't look right pulling into second base. The next thing you know, he's going to be missing at least a few weeks. So Stanton's down. Oswaldo Cabrera is up, which is good. I thought Oswaldo Cabrera had a very good spring. I thought he was going to make the team at a camp, but he was one of the last guys cut. So it's nice to see him getting a chance. You know, Josh Donaldson, who even knows what the heck is going on with him. But Aaron Hicks can't buy a hit either, and he also can't buy any Yankee fan liking him, apparently, because he gets booed every time they look at him, every time he steps on the field. So something's changing with the Yankees right now, and they're just going to have to piece it together until they're fully healthy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I mean, we're going with a little injury bug ourselves. Scherzer looks like maybe hopefully Sterling Marte only has to miss like a start or two. We don't know yet, but it looks like maybe it may be the best case scenario that I heard with that injury. Might have been a little precaution, but hopefully it doesn't too big with Marte if we need
Yeah,
him. But yeah,
luckily
it's gonna
with
be a little scary.
luckily with Marte though,
It's also gonna
it
be a
looked
little
like
scary
it
with
was you know, Marte came out with neck stiffness. So as long as it's not his legs and the hamstrings or anything like that, you know, neck stiffness sucks, but I don't think that's something that's going to sideline him for a long time, you know?
yeah, exactly. I can't see that. Hopefully, hopefully, Carrasco only misses the start or two. I heard, maybe
Oh,
one of those
that
things that he just that hurt.
injury bug, man, all over the place this year. You're right, the Carrasco thing. Forgot about that
Yeah,
too. He had the
yeah,
injection in the elbow, so he's going to miss at least 2 weeks.
yeah. I just hope we make it through this and hopefully it doesn't hit us like this the rest of the season. And also, I hope Steve Cohen and Mets GM Billy Epler be on the phone. Don't be afraid to freaking make big moves. I mean, not often you got this little window to get that championship. Strike while the iron's hot. Freaking
Hell yeah,
don't
man.
hold, yeah, don't hold back like last year.
As the great Don West would say, be dialing.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I do got to give points that the Mets called up Brett Beatty, but don't let these guys ride the bench too much. These two young players you called up, Brett Beatty, Alvarez. These guys need to get it back. You're doing a disservice to these players. It's not like football where sometimes they kind of like maybe on the bench, I don't know, the clipboard, whatever. These guys need to get at bats. They need to get in game action. Also, yesterday, I mean, I don't know how much it would have made a difference yesterday's game against Kershaw, but that's one of those pitchers that you kind of need that you want to have experience facing. And I just felt that's the only way you're going to get these players. You want these players to get to where they're going to be. I mean, they need to be able to facing this tough pitching. So the only way they're going to get good is they actually face this tough pitching that's going to be in the major league. And they made a mistake there last night. I felt.
What so you thought that Beatty should have faced Kershaw?
Yeah, exactly. They needed that all those at bats and that experience, and that's
Yeah.
an important part of that experience is being ready and having that experience facing some of the best pitching in the world.
And you know what, Dan,
Well,
you were proven right. I agree with you. Even though going into the game last night, I didn't I didn't really think twice. I kind of I looked at the lineup and I said, oh, okay, against the lefty, they sat Beatty. I didn't like it, but I understood it. But looking back on it too, you're 100% right because they didn't hit Kershaw anyway. Why not throw Beatty in there and let him get the at bats, right?
yeah, exactly. The only way you're going to get to be the best is you face the best.
That's true. That's true. And the other thing too that worried me a little bit is that Scherzer apparently had to talk Buck Showalter into letting him into pairing him with Alvarez today because I think Buck wanted him to work with the veteran Nito, but Scherzer, understanding that you have to bring these guys along a little bit, kind of talked Buck into letting him work with Alvarez today. And there were a couple things that they had during the game, which I thought was good. It's a good learning experience for him, right?
Yeah, exactly. I feel Alvarez needed to have experience catching these pitchers that he's going to be catching. And kudos to Max Scherzer on that part, on his end.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're 100% right about that. And I think that's just about going to do it for us today, Dan. So before we get out of here, you have any plugs for yourself?
Sure, you got, of course, my Twitter account, Bobo103NYC. You see there on the screen. My Instagram, Bobo718DK. And, of course, my YouTube account, Daniel Kurlan. Of course, also, do watch my appearance on the Davey Max Sports program. And hopefully what you're doing with this show, you're liking and you hit like and subscribe. I hope you guys do the same thing once you've watched the Davey Max Sports program. Dave's a great guy. I mean, a great guy way beyond what you see on the show. He's just a great guy, and he puts on a great performance doing this show. And he's just, the guy is very energetic. I have to say, he puts on a good show. Let's put it this way, Dave. I mean, everybody that him and Roy. They just have this great chemistry together, him and Roy. I don't know why, but they have some kind of weirdness, but they fit. They just fit well together, those two, and it's an amazing. It's just one heck of a show, and it is a whole other experience. It is a whole other experience if you've never watched the Davey Max Sports program. Boy, you in for a real treat, man. You might ask yourself, what did I just watch? Or you might even find yourself laughing like crazy and wanting to show your friends, like, man, you really got to see this. I could not believe what I just saw. Like, it's well worth your time watching. He also does a lot of other stuff on his YouTube channel. He does that Star Wars podcast, Yaddle Chattel. Yup, and of course the Davey Mack and Son wrestling program, wrestling show. He does
another great show.
Yeah,
and also do yourself a favor and sign up to his Patreon because he's going to start doing that new show. I don't know if you saw, Dan, talking about the satellite years, talking about the Opie and Anthony show and Ron and Fez and Special Delivery with Dave and Sam and all the shows that he did on there. So that's going to be a really fun watch too.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear all those amazing stories. I mean, that's literally the first time I knew Dave was hearing his antics on Ron and Fez. That was
me too.
And I can tell you, the first time I saw Dave in person, it's gonna really give you a big thing. Like remember sometimes he made little appearances in Opie and Anthony. He did this bit called "Guess What Dave's." Well, I'm gonna have to a little more than what I'm saying here. Guess what Dave's hiding where the where the sun don't shine, right? Opie and Anthony had to guess where Dave was hiding where the sun don't shine. Very much so I can describe it. And I just remember being in the audience that time, Opie and Anthony, and even though I'm aware I've heard them do the bit before, I did not see it coming. That was going to happen that day that I was in the audience. Literally, they actually got Opie and Anthony's autograph, by the way. That
very cool.
Of course, having his hands over the area, but like, what did I just walk into? See, like, guy, like, and I'm just walking in, and I'm seeing who really have to guess what he's hiding in, and well, like I said, hiding where the sun shine, like, seeing it in person just really was. It was kind of shocking seeing seeing him pull that pin first. And by the way, if you're wondering what he was hiding in that place, he was hiding a jar of pills from whatever prescription medicine he was on. He was trying to pills at me, but just
Spoiler alert.
seeing that. Yeah. I'm spoiling something that happened in 2008, by the way.
Exactly.
But it was kind of wild seeing that at first.
Very funny, man. Dave is the absolute best. So do yourself a favor, check out Davey Max Sports Program, and obviously, like Dan said, Roy and producer Rob too, who's always great on there, and the frequent guests, Pepper Stanley, Dan himself, Big A, and all the other greats. So do yourself a favor and check that out. And I think that's just about going to do it for us this week, Dan. So for my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan, and for myself, Rob Cramer, this is the Best Seat in the House podcast. I will catch you next week, everybody.